And here we are at the top of the hexagram. We are in gate 1 and the 6th line, which is called objectivity. Objectivity is a matter of perspective. This is subjective objectivity. And let's not get fooled by the word here. As long as you're alone in this life, you're subjective, even if you're being objective. You can't get away from it. Nobody can get away from the ultimate subjectivity of being who you are out of the design that you have. What we consider to be high art today, what will it be tomorrow? We don't know. There are millions and millions of pieces of creativity that are garbage, long forgotten. Not everything can be mutative. So this question of what is creative value becomes an enormous dilemma. For the 1/6 at least. It looks out and it says, yes, okay, I look at it now, it seems to be okay, but how will this stand the test of time? Go out in the street, in London or New York, any of the big cities, and look at some of the new buildings that are going up. It may be attractive today when you look at it in our consciousness, maybe. What will it look like in the next phase of looking back? Will it still have a place, or will it be torn down and replaced with something new? Will we be pleased to see these buildings survive? Some of them? Probably not. The exaltation says clear assessment of creative value, clarity in creative expression. This is the beauty of this line. We know through all the lines that we've explored on our journey so far that the 6th line goes through its 3rd line process. It has the energy to sustain creative work when it's younger, but it really doesn't understand the other, and it sees that it is not easy to make a contribution. It's not easy to get the mutation out, and then it learns to see that the creative process is natural, but the ability to transfer that to the whole is not. In other words, it gets to see that the muse works through you no matter what, but not everybody who has the muse work through them can successfully take that into society and get rewarded for it. So their focus is different. Their focus is on the value of the creativity itself. The rest of the hexagram is about surrendering, in that sense, to the muse, allowing the muse to do its work, because that's the real creativity. But the 6th line is beyond that. The 6th line is saying, well, yes, but this painting, it's not enough that you hang this painting in the gallery. This painting needs to be advertised. Hang it in the gallery, but make sure it's published in the newspaper. Make sure that everybody loves it, so that it ends up being bought by some great museum and people go to see it for the next 1,000 years. That's what the 6th line is looking for. That is the long-term value of the creativity. These are failed artists, failed writers, and failed musicians. They wanted to be artists and they ended up being art critics or teachers of literature, being something on the other side of that creative process. This 6th line doesn't express its own creativity, but it assesses the creativity of others. This clear assessment is a lifelong process, and at the end of your life, it can only be comparative, and you still do not know. We're talking about mutation, and human beings are very selfish. They want everything in their time. We're our species, and our species operates beyond generational borderlines. It's a movement. Mutation is a movement, and it goes far beyond a single lifetime. Any mutation that is of value travels hundreds of generations. This is something that can only be judged in time by looking back. In the detriment, we have the risk that subjective appraisal will result in disappointment and creative frustration, subjectivity and self-expression that may lead to creative frustration. You're looking at your own stuff and you think it's great, and nobody pays any attention. And this is one of the things that happens to the 1/6. They go through the process of feeling humiliated because they think their thing is really great. Nobody else appreciates it, which doesn't stop them from being of value in the appraisal of others. In Paris in the 1920s, there were many minor artists who were deeply important to those who would become the major artists of that century. No, they were important to them because they had a really good critical eye. They shared their craft and they had learned a different skill. They learned to see which one of their contemporaries was doing something interesting, was doing something that could be of value. And these so-called minor artists, they are the unsung heroes of any artistic movement. We need these 1/6s because they do a valuable job in being able to assess what expression might be mutable. But they're rarely mutative forces themselves. They tend to substantiate whether the 5th line attracts society, whether the attraction it has is valid or not. You're not really going to get a lot of creative expression out of a 1/6 because they recognize clearly what really will be mutative. What happens in the detriment is that there is this subjectivity that comes in, and it comes early in life and it pulls them saying, yes, this is it. This is the person who says, this is the most beautiful thing. And this subjective appraisal leads to disappointment because time passes it by. And 5 years later, nobody's interested in it because it was just a fad. It was not really of creative value, and it did not really bring a mutation. So the 1/6 is not involved in a moment-by-moment basis with trying to assert its creative uniqueness. It has a much greater process going on. The process can actually really flower in the end. That's the perspective that sees things really clearly in terms of whether it's a mutation that will have some generational transcendent power to it. Nobody sees that better than a 1/6, sitting on the roof of the house, looking at the creative impulses in the world. It has the capacity of objectively saying that mutation will take hold, that one will go the distance. I bet 400 years from now, everybody's doing that. This is the possibility that lies here as wisdom. It's about timing. The nature of bringing love into the world is not about loving your neighbor. It's about loving yourself. The important thing about bringing real, true, creative mutation into the world is simply about these individual forces being themselves, nothing more and nothing less. What happens is that we have this enormous need of the ego to assert itself because we need to survive on the material plane. And the material plane is feed me now, fill my stomach now. But mutation is not about that. It's not. Mutation takes time. So we've opened up the quarter of mutation here in this first gate, and each of the 15 hexagrams that follow, they each carry within them a deep potential in terms of the mutation at the global level, not the personal level. When we move from the first hexagram and this need for expression and finally the ability to recognize the potential of unique expression, we stay in the individual process and we go to the 43rd gate, which is the gate of individual mental insight. We could say that the potential expression leads to the potential insight, and that insight is there ultimately to be able to explain the mutation. Mutative explanation is one of the major ingredients for allowing mutation to take place in the world because it satisfies the needs of the mental plane. This leads to a dilemma for the 1/6. It sits there on top of the house of creativity and it looks across to the 43-1, which in the first line says patience. Resistance has to be eliminated. Mutation has to get out into the world, and it has to be explained. Mutation has to take its place, and it takes a long, long time. You know, we will never live long enough to appreciate the impact of the mutations that happen now. Think about human design, you know, the things that I'm sharing with you, the work that we do together here. There's no possible way that we will ever see the end result of this knowledge being in the world. Perhaps in 300 or 400 years' time, someone will look back on this time with that perspective, and they will see the mutative value and beauty in all of this. No, for sure, it can't be judged now. It can only be lived as a mutation now, nothing else. The grounding for the first gate in the 6th line is found in the 2nd gate in the 6th line. It's called fixation. And it says unable and unwilling to see the whole picture. And this is a very difficult 6th line because their gift is to see the whole picture, to be the one that is separate and aloof, who has the opportunity to look down from the roof of the house and see the full perspective. But here they're unable or unwilling. And I confess that I'm not sure how this grounds the objectivity of the first gate, because it is seeing the whole picture and it's assessing the value. If you have any ideas how these two may play together, I'd be really interested in anything that you have to say. Leave me a comment. If you'd like to, of course. I'm not informing you to. It's not an order. Okay, the moon is still in gate 49 since 8:38 this morning, the sacral gate of sacrifice, of revolution, of principles. It is gate 49, isn't it, that it was in? Yes, because then it's moving into 30. So yes, and it moves into gate 30 at 1828. And that's the clinging fire, gate 30, the gate of recognition of feelings in the solar plexus. This is a gate in the collective sensing circuit, opposite gate 41. It's the human experiential way with its thirst for destiny and its hunger for change. You might find yourself feeling restless while this gate is active, eager for a new experience because the grass is always greener on the other side. Remember to use your strategy and authority before committing your energy to the discovery of any new experience. And finally, the moon moves into gate 55 at 4:12 tomorrow morning. This is another solar plexus gate pointing us down into the root, and gate 39, the gate of provocation. This is the gate of abundance and spirit in the 55. You know, this is your cup is full or your cup is it's a half full or half empty. Because that's the emotional wave. The flavor here is taking you from hope to pain and back again. And there's always that point. Half full, half empty. This gate is in individuality. So we know there may be melancholy here. And it can also be an indecisive gate because of that pulse of energy. You only know when you know. So what I know is that that is the end of our exploration of gate 1. And tomorrow, we move into a new gate, gate 43. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey through gate 1. As always, go gently. And as always, love yourself. You are a glorious creature. And you are unique. I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.